Okay, let's move on to S, the safety part of measure. I think this is one area that really has more room to be explored, especially by security folks. As we look at it, we see, okay, root cause. Why? We often do root cause analysis. Why are we now saying root cause is a myth? Well, this is a problem in complex systems because you can't actually get a full picture of a complex system, and root cause analysis sort of it depends on having that full picture. Also, complex systems don't function in a linear manner. Often this root cause analysis and thinking that you can do root cause is often a result of doing kind of functioning in a blame type culture. And we often forget all the organizational decisions we made that led up to the actual failure point. And it really puts focus on the event over the situation that led to the event, and doesn't ask the right questions, and doesn't help us really change the way they're operating. And it might be helpful to sort of juxtapose, like in a simple system, yeah, you can do root cause analysis because they're linear in nature, they're easy to predict, you're able to comprehend them. You can ask 5 whys and get to an answer inside of a simple system. In a complex system though, they're non-linear. There's that bullwhip effect that we've talked about a couple of times. They're unpredictable. And we don't really have a mental model. You can't just say, oh yeah, I got the complex, I have the system in my head and I understand how all the pieces function together. And we have to understand too, there's plenty and years of safety literature on this. And Sidney Dekker has a great book that I would recommend called Drift into Failure. He says, failure is this inevitable byproduct of a complex system's normal functioning. And once we let that sink in, and once we look at the type of systems that we're building today with all these services that are hooked together, and we understand like we are operating in a different place, in a different role than we have in the past. This is not our 3-tier web application anymore. We're outside of linear system thinking. And Adrian Cockcroft says that failures in systems or complex systems are a problem because there's just not enough safety margin. And I think this is where security fits in. Helping the business, helping our teams understand where the safety margin is, stopping root cause analysis and not trying to go into blaming, but kind of going into a blameless retrospective approach. Adding in telemetry and instrumentation that helps us understand where those safety margins are, where we are in our system, what we're dealing with in actual production. And honestly, there's a lot more to explore in this area. I think one of my thoughts is that in safety and security, there's going to be, that's going to be one of the main kind of Venn diagram overlap situations where we learn a lot over the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, I have a couple resources for you. There's that Drift into Failure book by Dekker. There's an Understanding Human Error video series that Dekker has put on YouTube. And also, if you haven't read Richard Cook's paper called How Complex Systems Fail, you got to read that. That is like key literature for the space. Okay, and check the slides on Twitter. You can get all the links for all this stuff. So I know I'm going kind of fast here, but all right, let's go into the unrestrained sharing part of measure. So Rich Smith says this. He says, a security team who embraces openness about what it does and why spreads understanding. Yet when we look at survey data, like a good 1 out of 5 developers, they're saying, we don't even know what security expects of us. This is from that same DevSecOps survey. So, sharing kind of goes against security standard operating procedure. This is not what we're taught in ISC squared, CISSP school, or whatever, however you want to think about it. But I think that there's 4 keys to DevSecOps culture. And this is something that I often encourage people on, is like, find ways to build up mutual understanding between dev and operations and security. Build up a shared language together. Try to come up with some shared views that you have about the system, shared views you have about current state of where things are. Help put collaborative tooling in place that's not like, okay, only 2 people have access to this security control. And if maybe you're in a regulated environment and you do have to have that, come up with ways to inject telemetry and other things back into your developer groups who care about the application that's being secured or defended against. I've seen really successful teams have luck with that. If you need some prior art on that, hit me up on Twitter. I'd be happy to chat with you about it. Some resources on this, if you're kind of going through like, how do we build up do this kind of sharing? How do we build, build these muscles? I think the Phoenix Project's a great book. Agile Application Security has some great resources in it. I didn't cover this, but there's a Dear Auditor project, and the Agile Application Security has a section for auditors and dealing with kind of how to bring them into the loop. So I think those are really helpful as well. Okay, let's kind of look at the last couple here. The next one is rugged. Rugged software has been around for a while. We've been talking about this as an industry for a decent amount of time, but I think we're really starting to see kind of the overlaps between DevSecOps, rugged software, DevOps. Kind of the industry as a whole is seeing kind of value in building software that can be defended, software that can be that is more rugged in nature. Often we find ourselves in just the most basic of problems of where we're dealing with a system that we know how no longer have like operational or developer control anymore because the person who wrote it's gone, right? So I love these O'Reilly covers. So thanks for letting me entertain you with those. I hope you're entertained with them. But just having something simple like an SBOM, like a software bill of materials, and knowing what we have. That is very important as we're kind of building out our systems. Like, do we know where a certain version of struts is running or whatever, right? Like having that understanding is critical. And still, like when we're looking at survey data, a lot of people still don't have that. Another one is favoring short-lived systems. There's the cattle not pets scenario, and this is Sunil Yu over at Bank of America. Has the DIE framework, and he's proven that if you can show your system has these three attributes, you're actually more secure just by the very nature of these three things existing. So check him out, check out his work on it. So you're looking for systems that are distributed, immutable, and ephemeral. But where does rugged grow? So outside of like knowing what we have and kind of building into the DIE model. I think that we're going to see more in the advanced deception space, and we're going to see more in the continuous verification space. So deception is doing things like honeypots, tar pits, man traps. It's simple to get started. You can inject application layer HTTP headers. There's some good open source projects, honeypot, deception logic. Those are some great ones. The continuous verification piece is where we're seeing a growth out of the chaos engineering. Some of the stuff on that is in like Aaron Reinhardt's talk over at RSA, Phillips Maddox's talk, and Herb Todd's talk both have deception stuff. So I find those to be interesting. Okay, well, let's look at the last aspect, and this is arguably probably the most important. Save the best for last, I suppose. Empathy. Developers, they want to do security, and survey data shows year after year after year, half of them just say we don't have enough time to spend on security. It's not that we don't want to, but it's not that we don't want to. We just don't have enough time to do so. And I look at the DevSecOps deep thoughts and kind of just channel Jack Handy, and I don't know why it's not showing on here, but thanks to Josh Zimmerman for giving me this idea on the DevOps deep thoughts. But I'll just read this for you. When I think of all the arguments that CISO and I have had, I realize how silly most of them were. And it makes me wonder why he wanted to argue over such stupid things. I think I'll go ask him. So this kind of just puts a point here that we don't have the empathy muscles built up. And a lot of times you'll hear security folks say, those stupid developers, and they'll kind of blame developers, and there's that blame type culture. Inversely, I've been told by developers that, oh, you security people, you just want a machine that's powered off and unplugged. And so like I'm completely disconnected from the business and I don't understand, that we need to actually kind of run the service. Both show this siloization that's occurred in many organizations. And that's just one of the things that we're going to have to work on breaking down. Having the empathy and shared understanding of each other is really important. Patrick Dubois said this, I don't know, I think it was 2011, 2012. Back when no one thought DevOps was going to make the jump into the enterprise and it was just for startups. But he was writing in the Cutter IT Journal on how DevOps can actually function in the enterprise. And he said this, he said, culture is the most important aspect to DevOps succeeding in the enterprise. And so security is an enterprise concern. And for us to actually get DevSecOps right and to bring the culture in, like we need to participate with them. So I leave you with the measure framework, and I hope it's useful to you. I hope you can use it. I hope it gives you a way to think about it. I built a lot of this in the idea of thinking through how helpful John Willis's and Damon Edwards' CAMS model was for me whenever I was doing DevOps, which is culture automation, measurement, sharing. Hopefully some of that can be used here in the measure for you. Also, I mentioned that we have, I knew I put a link in here. So we have the Chaos Engineering book. If you want a complimentary copy of it, go to verica.io/book, and we'd be happy to hook you up with that. Anyway, so if you have any questions, find me on Twitter, find me in chat. I just go by the handle of Wicket, and you get these slides there. So really appreciate the time today, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, James. That was a great presentation at TechStrong Con. Now it's time for our headlines around the media ops world. Again, as usual, it's just a smattering of headlines. You really need to go down and check out the sites themselves for you to get the full flavor. But over on Container Journal, we have, will DevOps survive the Kubernetes onslaught? You know, I think DevOps is an amoeba that swallows these things. And DevOps will be part of Kubernetes. But read the article, see for yourself. Also, we have an update from the company Ahana bringing Presto DB to containers and VMs. Good to see that. I think we're seeing a lot of this whole data ops, databases in a containerized format, in cloud native, and it's a hot topic. Over on Security Boulevard, Bluetooth reconnection flaw could lead to spoofing attacks. You know, we haven't heard about a good Bluetooth vulnerability in a while. I guess it's time, unfortunately. And then how to run a GDPR gap analysis. You know, with everything going on with COVID, we can't afford to neglect our compliance, obviously. And this is a really nice how-to on how to do a gap analysis on where you are with your GDPR compliance. Over on DevOps.com, we have how to make DevSecOps a reality. I'm glad to see people aren't arguing about whether or not it's real anymore, but you should check that article out. And then we have another one, revisiting 2020 cloud predictions in light of COVID-19. Well, of course, no one saw that happening, but you know, cloud, if anything, cloud's been a benefactor from it. So interesting stuff there. And then we have an Algorithmia Updates ML Ops platform. Good company update there. Try to keep you posted on what's happening in DevOps. Those are the articles for today on the Media Ops site. Go check them out. And as I always say, there's so much more there. Please check them all out. Next up, we're going to be going over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor. And Charlene's guest today is Jake Olcott. And it's ways security managers can justify investments even as security budgets are being cut. Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops, and I am here now with Jake Olcott, who is the Vice President of Communications and Government
Affairs.
Government Affairs, yeah, at BitSight. Hey, Jake, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Charlene. Nice to be here.
Great. So tell me a little bit about BitSight, first of all.
So BitSight is a cybersecurity ratings and analytics company. And what that means is we collect security performance data about organizations around the world. And we create security ratings and analytics using that data. It's used for a lot of different purposes, anywhere from third-party risk management to benchmarking, benchmarking against your peers, cyber insurance, investment, mergers and acquisitions. So lots of different reasons why organizations really want to have sort of a better understanding of their own, security performance and third parties that they're working with.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys really have your finger on the pulse of what's happening out there as it pertains to cybersecurity. So I'm interested in talking to you a little bit about kind of the marketscape for security, and particularly as it pertains to spending. And I know that, in the face of the pandemic, a lot of organizations pretty much every organization had to pivot and basically create a work from home employee workforce almost overnight. So I think a lot of budgets kind of went out the window at that point. People were just getting what they needed to do to make sure that everybody could work effectively and securely. So, am I right? I mean, did companies basically blow through their security budget when they did that?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it perfectly. And I mean, I guess I would say that for so many of us, I mean, this has been such a dramatic change in our business. I mean, so many businesses, this is, we're in survival mode. Right now, and I think that what from the security and risk perspective, what's interesting is maybe for years we had this debate about the risk reward of a remote workforce, and that just went out the door. We had to do it. We had to enable a secure workforce. We had to bring on third-party vendors like Zoom. And so the challenge, I think, for the security and risk professional was, how do we enable the business, during this, this time of need? And I think that this is, going to be the story, for the security and risk professional, from here on out, because we're sort of, now we're used to this environment. We're not going to go back to the way things were.
So do you think this has put more emphasis on security in general in organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just seeing some statistics that came out. The first couple months of coronavirus, we were very focused on sort of workforce enablement issues and things like that. I saw that there was a survey that said security was not really on the radar in the March and April timeframe, but certainly come May and at the beginning of June, security is back on it. So, a slight dip, from where things stood, sort of in the first couple months. But, to your point, I mean, the security professional now is, still spending a lot of time thinking about, do we have to reallocate, parts of our, security budget? A lot of people are thinking more about, how do we optimize costs? So it's not necessarily a budget cutting situation as much as it might be, should we be prioritizing our efforts in different ways? And so those are the types of conversations I think are happening across most businesses today.
So do you think that a lot of organizations are maybe giving short shrift to security in light of this because of just the need for, just because the need exists to have a workforce that is that much more secure because they are outside the corporate parameters, if you will, or the perimeter, if you will. And so I would think that organizations would actually want to put more money and more of their mind share and budgets towards securing a workforce that is at the very least a hybrid workforce in and out of the office. But I can certainly understand why they would want to optimize the technology that they have on hand. But it seems to me that it's going to take more from a tools and technologies perspective to keep a workforce that is obviously so very mobile, more secure. So, what does more money need to be thrown at security in these organizations, or can they really make do with what they've got?
It's probably, I know that that's the question that we usually tend to ask ourselves, which is like, do we need more money? And again, I would go back to this idea that, over the last number of years, security has gotten whatever it wants, it's sort of been unlimited budget, we want more and more, we're going to spend more and more. And those days are over. Those days are over. Companies are, in the last couple of years, there's been much greater attention, in the C-suite, the CFO, the board, asking more and more questions about what are we getting for this security spend, and how do we measure the effectiveness of our spend? How do we measure the efficacy of our program? So I think that conversation, has really sort of changed the game. So I don't think the right question is, do we need more money per se? And that's kind of where we're sort of getting into this. How do we optimize our program, or the things that we can otherwise cut? I will say though that just in thinking about like work from home, for example, I think that these things are always done in stages, and so I think a lot of folks, were sort of able to successful,ly pivot, enabling, this remote workforce. So I think it's just raising more questions that people are now starting to deal with. One of the things that we spent a lot of time on at BitSight over the last number of months is it's not necessarily just the security of our individual, laptops and endpoints, but now we have to worry about the security of the home network.
Right.
The home network is obviously, has become a huge, attack vector. And traditional technologies have not necessarily given us the insight into, what that home environment looks like. So it's not, it's not just about, asking for more money. It's about being strategic, with that, limited amount of money that we have.
So, when you say strategic, obviously we're talking about not just allocating more funds towards security in the right places, but also, to your point, optimizing what they already have.
Yeah.
But when a security manager needs to make additional investments in an area, maybe where there's less security, such as ways to kind of lock down the home network, for example, how can they justify going back and telling the board, I really do need more money?
It
seems like
absolutely.
a difficult argument for them to do.
It's and I think that's a great question. I think there's I think there are a variety of different things that that security and risk leaders who kind of really have a sense of their position, in the company in terms of like, how are we enabling our business to move forward? And I think that's what you always want to, sort of couch your requests in, and quite frankly, your program in. How am I, as a professional, sort of enabling my business to succeed? And I think that there's sort of two different ways you want to think about this. One, I think that there's a lot of sort of tactical business enablement that people should be thinking about, here in the short term. And, we talked about, sort of work from home, the other issues that we kind of see popping up a lot right now, this idea of, third party risk or vendor risk management. How do I onboard new vendors, more quickly, more efficiently, while still kind of, thinking about their risk impact to me. So I would think of those a little bit more tactical, and what can I achieve, in the short term with those things? How can we kind of, keep moving our business forward? From a longer term perspective, though, the more strategic business enablement conversation that security and risk leaders need to have is recognizing just how important security has become to the business. And so when you think about it, whether it's, our customers, our investors, our insurance companies, our government regulators, everybody's asking us a lot of questions about cybersecurity. How well are you doing? How can you show me how well you're doing? And so it's really thinking about how do we develop a program, and a lot of this is about measurement of our program, measuring the effectiveness of our program using metrics. Collecting metrics. That is becoming the way that we can really sort of show our overall value to not only to the business and to our own internal stakeholders, but almost more importantly, these external stakeholders that are asking us all these questions.
Well, I'm really, really interested to see how security budgets are going to fall out in the months to come as more organizations, kind of not just deal with this work from home employee setup now, but also as organizations kind of start to embrace, or at least allow employees to come back to work, because I imagine they're going to be faced with all sorts of issues once those laptops and those mobile devices that were connected to the home network for so long are now coming back onto the corporate network. So there's going to be, I think we're going to hear a lot about it next year. So, or in the months ahead. So, what do you guys project as far as, what are we going to be seeing as far as the security landscape in the next 6 to 8 months or so, based on what you guys have heard and what you guys have seen?
Yeah. I think just to sort of piggyback off of your point. I mean, I think, and this has been true for a lot of years, but really the name of the game is visibility, right? Mm-hmm. It's about having insight into sort of this broader ecosystem, wherever our employees are. Wherever they're working, whatever, sort of our cloud deployments, look like, whatever third parties, or vendors we're working with, how do we maintain, visibility into, the security posture, the security performance, of these sort of various, sort of critical parts, of our business. And then I really think it's, more than just sort of visibility. How do we operationalize and sort of take action, leveraging data, leveraging, sort of various, analytics and things. I mean, how can we really sort of build a security program that, is responding dynamically, to the risks that we face. And of course, the other thing that you and the viewers know is that, this space that we're in, lots of different sectors are seeing, new threats. Vaccine manufacturers, for example, are facing a completely new threat environment than they may have, just 6 months ago. And so, right. Being able to, there have been so many pieces of research about the importance of, maintaining that cyber hygiene. Really focusing on doing the basics has always been the most important. 0 days are something that get a lot of attention in headlines, but it's really focusing on the basics. I think that right. These are the things that organizations are really going to be focusing a lot more on.
Excellent. Well, I, for one, am interested in seeing what the next few months bring. So, Jake, thank you so much for taking the time and having this discussion with me. Really, really interesting stuff. And I appreciate your expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlene. Appreciate you.
All right, great. So everybody stick around, please. We've got lots more coming up on TechStrong TV, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Charlene O'Hanlon here with Media Ops, and I am here to give you the Tuesday edition of the webinar's preview. We've got some great webinars coming up on DEVOPS.com. So I think it's definitely worth checking out some of these webinars. So without further ado, let's take a look at what we've got coming down the pipe. Our first one is happening tomorrow, Wednesday at 3 p.m. on DEVOPS.com. As I said, this one is called Data Management for Multi-Cloud. It's sponsored by Red Hat and Cockroach Labs. And during the webinar, the folks from Red Hat and Cockroach Labs are going to talk about how Cockroach's cloud-native distributed SQL database running on OpenShift can help organizations modernize their infrastructure to achieve scale and efficiencies. So if you are looking to go cloud native with your deployment efforts, considering different options, check this webinar out. Hopefully there'll be some great information in there for you, but really think it'll be helpful in your quest. The second webinar that we have coming up is happening Thursday, July 23rd at 11 a.m. This one is called Dependency Health, removing the barriers to keeping projects in shape. The fine folks at WhiteSource are sponsoring this one, and Risa Arkins and David Habusha, both from WhiteSource, are going to be on hand, and they're going to talk about some of the challenges that enterprises are currently facing with having open source dependencies, dependency management, and how they can identify how updates and vulnerability patches can be applied intelligently, safely, and even perhaps automatically by keeping a better data management system in place, or sorry, not data management, dependency management in place. So if you are having troubles with your open source dependencies and you're looking for some tips and tricks to help overcome those hurdles, please check this webinar out. This is going to be another good one. Again, this is happening Thursday, July 23rd at 11 a.m. on DEVOPS.com. The third webinar I want to let you guys know about today is called Automated Deployment Monitoring with Lightstep and CodeFresh. It is sponsored by, you guessed it, Lightstep and CodeFresh. So it's happening Thursday, July 23rd at 1 p.m. on DEVOPS.com. We've got Guy Salton from CodeFresh and Eric O'Rear from Lightstep, who are going to be on hand to show how the two technologies working together can help ensure that any commit and build results in better experience for end users, something so many companies are concerned with these days, especially in the times of pandemic when the online experience is critical. So if you're using microservices in your application delivery and deployment, you want to make sure that that your commits are actually doing some good, and you're looking to perhaps automate some or all of those processes. Definitely this webinar is worth checking out. So again, it's happening Thursday, 1 p.m. At DEVOPS.com. That's 1 p.m. Eastern on July 23rd. So that is all that I have for you this time around. Tune back in on Thursday. I should have another fresh batch of webinars for you to listen and hopefully find some value in. So until then, guys, please stay safe.
Hey, Charlene, thanks for that interview, and also thanks for the webinar previews. You know, we do 4, 5, 6 webinars a week here on Media Ops, and they're all great. They're on security, they're on cloud native, they're on DevOps, digital transformation. Charlene's previews will really focus you in on which ones you want to attend. They're also available on demand. If you can't make them live, just register. So thanks, Charlene, for that as well. Next up, as usual, we're going to head over to the Analyst Corner, where Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategy Group, is going to talk to us about the new report commissioned by Cloudbees that the Accelerated Strategies Group wrote. It's the State of Software Delivery Management. I think it's an excellent report. We'll be doing some more follow-up on that in the days ahead. But Mitchell has that. And then Mitchell also has a great interview with Suresh Raghuran, co-founder and CEO of Platform 9. Hey, Mitchell, take it away.
Welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group. If you've been watching TechStrong TV today, then you know this news, that we're launching a new report, a new research report on the state of software delivery management, 2020. Creative title, I know. But I'm very passionate about not only creating software, but creating software that has an impact. And it's a complex business. You can get some teams really functioning very well at delivering good software. But even in those cases, do you know that the software that's being delivered, that application or mobile app or whatever it may be, something that's going up on the web or in your website or part of your online SaaS application, whatever it might be, someone paid to have that developed. Someone invested money in the business to have that created. And is it having the impact, or is it going to have the impact that they expected? Is it the software that they expected to get, the functionality, the capabilities? Oftentimes, that appears like it's kind of a murky backroom process of how all that software gets created, and you don't really know until we get to the delivery date, whether it's on schedule or not, to really know, am I getting what I thought I would get? Yes, you might be able to see things in some testing and some early user acceptance testing and things like that, but that's pretty late in the process to find out the software that's being created may not be what you were expecting or what you wanted. So in this research, we talked to a number of organizations, got some extremely good data around where they see that they've made progress to really understand the process of creating software and all the elements that go into that, and being able to manage that from a macro perspective, but also dip into the details, the micro of what's really happening. So I'm not going to steal the thunder from the report. I definitely encourage you to download it. There's some other segments, videos, things like that we have both on TechStrong TV, on digitalanarchist.com, and the Accelerated Strategy Group website, which is accelst.com. So you can go there and download the executive summary. And we did this report in concert with CloudBees. They were the organization that commissioned it. And you can also go to CloudBees to find the full report. Download it from there. It has all kinds of great information. It's presented, I think, in a very visually appealing and easy way to consume. You can read the narrative, or you can really look at some of the stats that came out of the research itself. So I'd like to congratulate the ASG team on some really fine work, and thank our partner, CloudBees, who asked us to do this work. And we're very excited to deliver it to you and appreciate your feedback. So if you have any comments or questions about the report, don't hesitate to reach out. You can go to the Accelerated website. There's a contact form. You can also reach me at mitchell@accelst.com. Always happy to talk with you and receive your feedback, critical or positive, whatever it may be. We're always looking to improve what we do and the kind of work that we do and how we do it, and the results that come out of that. So thank you for listening, and please check out that report.
DEVOPS.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DEVOPS.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DEVOPS.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DEVOPS.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, I'm joined by Raghuram, who is CEO and co-founder of Platform 9. You probably have heard of Platform 9. They've been on several different show interviews from different conferences with Alan. And good to be talking with you today, Suresh.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. I appreciate you taking time. I know you're a busy guy and a lot of great things happening with Platform 9. For the two people in the universe who don't know who Platform 9 is, or maybe three, give us just a quick introduction of what Platform 9 does.
Yeah, happy to, Mitch. So we make it easy to run private and edge clouds. We do that by providing a SaaS-managed Kubernetes platform that in many ways gives you an Amazon Web Services-like, public cloud-like experience, except unlike the public cloud, It's all based on Kubernetes. So it's a Kubernetes service that you can plug in your own infrastructure into. So you can bring your own infrastructure, whether that is data center infrastructure, edge infrastructure, or public cloud infrastructure. So we have customers who use us to run private, edge, and hybrid clouds using open source technologies such as Kubernetes.
Takes off a big chunk of the sort of cloud on-prem architecture and deciding how you're going to deploy and manage Kube in that environment.
Yeah, it's the motivation behind the company was a lot of people love the simplicity and ease of use and the time to value of the public cloud. Right. I mean, the beauty of Amazon continues to be that Amazon Web Services continues to be that it's easy, right, and it's fast, and you can get things done. But a lot of people, depending on your industry, a lot of people want that speed and that efficiency and that agility, but they want to be able to bring that to on-premises environments that they may have, or to extend that to edge environments in certain industries, or to be able to manage a composite, a hybrid architecture spanning public cloud and owned infrastructure. And the moment you do that, you end up with this, like every other open source technology, Kubernetes is complex. And I know we have some announcements I'd love to talk to you about today, where there's a lot of integration complexity around Kubernetes as well. And by providing it as a SaaS managed service, what we're doing is we're making it easy, and we're allowing people to focus on using Kubernetes to actually deliver value to the business, as opposed to having to dealing with the plumbing. Because I don't think that the Kubernetes story is going to end by saying 50,000 enterprises are going to spend 10 man years each trying to roll out a handcrafted Kubernetes platform. That's not how this is going to end.
Well, and probably you don't appreciate the complexity of Kubernetes until you get into it and really get into not just setting it up in a dev environment, really thinking about clusters and deployment, especially if you're in a hybrid environment, more or less just in one location.
Yeah, it's a lot like the iceberg analogy, right? Where you see, when you get started, you see the top of the iceberg, right? In dev especially. But as you go further down the journey, and as you actually go to start running it in production, you're starting to transition from an individual user to a team, to teams of users, to an organization, to organizations that are using Kubernetes across multiple distributed infrastructure environments. And now you need like a production SLA around the Kubernetes platform. That's when you start to see how deep the iceberg runs under the water, right? And you find as you go that it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And many times people come back and say, well, can we go back and focus on what we were trying to do in the first place?
That's I want to go down that path again. Let's see if there's a better
That's
better
where we come in, right? We make it easy, we make it fast, and we make it lower cost, really, compared to handcrafting artisanal Kubernetes platforms.
And what's interesting too about how you position yourselves with Platform 9 is you talk about Kubernetes and the edge, not just Kubernetes in the cloud. Talk about that positioning and why you make that distinction.
Yeah, it's a great question. Very perceptive. receptive of you. Look, I think when we started the company, we used to think about who is the customer who's underserved by the public cloud. Because if you're going to use the public cloud alone, then you're kind of taken care of. I think the 2 or 3 big public cloud providers, they do a pretty good job if your needs can be met by using their infrastructure alone.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's more thinking about who is underserved, who are the users who are underserved by the public cloud architecture. And we believe that it was originally, when we started the company about 6 years ago, it was what we would call the private cloud market, right? People who had data center infrastructure or who wanted to control their assets or who had existing investments. And so that continues to be, I would say that was the first beachhead for Platform 9.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last couple of years, I know that, Edge is this hypey thing. But in the last couple of years, we've actually stumbled into some fantastic use cases around the edge. And by the edge, we don't mean everything in the edge. We specifically mean we're very focused on the retail edge. We think that there's a lot of quick serve restaurants and that are innovating using Kubernetes. And
point-of-sale devices where there's real interaction transactions with the cloud happening.
Exactly. And they're actually delivering software-defined stores using, and Kubernetes is the cloud platform today. So it's not VMware anymore, nor is it the public cloud. If you look at what's driving a lot of these software-defined stores, it's actually Kubernetes. And then you look at what's happening in the entire telco supply chain, and you look at 5G and the rollout that's coming. We think that the 5G rollout is going to be built around Kubernetes. We're actively involved in some really big projects in that space. So if you look at smart stores with retail, if you look at the 5G rollout, and you look at the media edge, we think that these are 3 specific segments which are actively scaling out edge clouds using Kubernetes. And it's one where our customers told us that the fact that we have a SaaS managed service, while that's nice from a private cloud perspective, from the edge perspective, it's a game changer because it now means that you can have a central SaaS-based control plane, a cloud-based control plane to manage thousands of stores. And you can manage it all remotely without requiring technical support to be done, shipping people to stores to fix problems. And so if you look at what the SaaS architecture does for the edge deployment architecture, the value is actually dramatically higher than it is in a private cloud context or in a public cloud context. So that's how we think about it. We think that the public cloud vendors, for customers who can focus on the public cloud alone, they do a pretty good job. But for customers who are underserved by that, who want either a private or an edge or a hybrid architecture, there is an unmet need to give them that simple, easy, industrial-grade Kubernetes experience. That's what we do with our SaaS service.
It's interesting. I come from the telecommunications industry, quite a few years on that, and I concur with you that the traditional network folks kind of think about the virtualization of the hardware stack, which in turning that into software, NFV, those kind of things. But it's also then deploying, you called it store as a service, X as a service, right? Applications. And the challenge is always doing that at scale, right? Doing that 100 of them is one thing. Doing that across tens of thousands of retail locations or doctors, medical facilities, doctors' offices, especially in an environment where things are changing very quickly today with COVID and economic pressures, certainly makes the case for thinking of the edge as a strategic component of your kind of IT and business transformation strategy.
Yeah, and one of our customers who's a very large quick serve, retail company, they are in production and they're rehearsing to be able to bring up 200 stores a week. And they're doing it all with automation. And so it's actually quite impressive that the level, it's been, a 15-month journey with us, with them, where they're investing in, I love the statement from one of the DevOps architects, the cloud architects, which is, we want to automate this till we can't break it. We can't get a deployment wrong. So it's not the case that they're trying to roll this out once they've gotten the deployment to work. We are well past that. Mm-hmm. But they're trying to get it to the point where they can't get it to break, where 200 stores can be deployed at the push of a command line with a very, very high degree of reliability, because that's how large their fleet is. If you think about the national and global fleet of stores, they're talking about 30,000 stores. And you can't do this, the old-fashioned way. And like you said, though retail is obviously in a very challenging spot today, as because of the COVID crisis. In many ways, investing in these digital smart store capabilities is actually, I think, a more important priority for them now, because it enables them to be resilient to some of the constraints imposed by the healthcare crisis.
Mm-hmm. Interested in your thoughts on this. I kind of envision something like the pop-up restaurant model for businesses. Yeah. It's all virtual, but it's also physical. But that physical location can change at any time for any reason, opportunistically, market-wise, competitive-wise, COVID, contactless services. Kind of interesting when you rethink business and delivering services that kind of strategy.
I think this is the COVID crisis is actually making us rethink things, I think, in many ways. And, look, my kids are huge fans of Chipotle. They love Chipotle food. And we've been stockholders because our kids love Chipotle food, right, for a long time, my wife and I. And I just read today that Chipotle has announced that they're going to hire 10,000 workers in the next 6 months to roll out drive-through capabilities in 60% of their restaurants. And you think about what it takes. I mean, firstly, it's good to see a retailer who's actually hiring 10,000 people, right? I mean, we need a lot more of that right now. But secondly, you think about why they're having to do that. They're having to do that to add drive-through capabilities. So the COVID crisis, despite all of the problems, it's also actually it's accelerating, what may have taken 5 to 7 years previously is going to happen in a period of 6 months, because there's simply no choice, right? People want to buy from Chipotle. Chipotle wants to sell to them, but there's just no way to do this now without investing in capabilities like this. Exactly. And then when you look under that and you say, well, what does that kind of business decision require from a store infrastructure point of view? And smart stores, right? I think smart stores are going to become like a critical asset for retailers to grow and thrive. And COVID is accelerating that.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. Starbucks, by the way, is another great example of that, where they had some plans already to shift. I forget, it's like 300 or 400 of their store locations, either shut them down or convert them to walk-up drive-through only. No, place to sit down, and they accelerated that because of COVID.
They're a hugely innovative company. Look, I'm a self-professed Starbucks junkie, and I miss walking out of the office to get my daily.
Guilty.
There you go. And my co-founder swears by the nitro. Our CTO swears by the nitro cold brew. I'm a cappuccino person myself, but I think under a company that I think you can expect them to be doing amazing things in the space.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Great talking with you about that. I'd love to explore it some more sometime. But let's talk more about the announcement. You made some specific announcements about making some of the edge, the access to it, the integration with it, with APIs, some of that easier, wizards. I know some interesting things you're doing in that area.
Yeah, so let me maybe put this in context, Mitch. So our mission is to make it easy and ubiquitous to be able to run a Kubernetes-based cloud, right? Whether that's a private cloud, an edge cloud, a hybrid cloud. We want that to be as easy as using the public cloud. And to do that, we've been doing this with our SaaS-based control plane for Kubernetes. It's based on upstream Kubernetes. And in March of this year, we actually released a free for-our self-serve plan, which we're really delighted with the traction with. We've had more than 1,600 people sign up for it, more than 100 clusters that are now live on the free tier. And one of the things we constantly think about is, we did a survey at KubeCon. I'm happy to send you the screenshot later, where every KubeCon we run the survey, and operational complexity and integration complexity continue to be the number one and number two problems with Kubernetes, right?
I believe that.
That if you look at what it takes to build and run a Kubernetes platform, it's not just Kubernetes, right? But there's Kubernetes, and then there's hardening it for HA, and there's integrating it with different infrastructure environments, and then there's integrating it with different storage and network environments, and then there's monitoring clusters, and because monitoring applications in a microservices world involves new kinds of problems. And cluster monitoring becomes more important. So you start bleeding into the observability space. And then there's integrations with CI and CD, right? So that integration problem, today we have announced a few specific capabilities that make it much easier to solve those problems. Number one, we are very happy to announce that Calico is a very popular networking technology that's a part of the Kubernetes ecosystem, CNCF ecosystem. And previously, customers had to kind of deploy their own Calico instance and manage it independently. So we were providing managed Kubernetes, but they had to kind of manage Calico by themselves. We're now delighted to share that when you manage Kubernetes with Platform 9, so when you go into a free tier and use the Kubernetes control plane, there is a fully managed Calico endpoint, API endpoint that's available. In other words, you don't have to deal with managing the software-defined network component of this cloud platform by yourself. It's built into the cloud platform. It's easy to use, and it's fast and easy, and it's integrated. It's fully managed, and the API is there, right there. So you can actually start hitting it right away. When you sign up for the free tier or use our cloud control plane, you can start invoking all of the Calico functionality, including BGP, to actually use more complex networking architectures with Kubernetes, and it's made easy. The second thing that I'm very happy to announce is we've also invested in making it easier to integrate this, our managed Kubernetes platform, with bare metal environments and with CSI integrations with leading CSI providers like Pure Storage and including VMware. So VMware, bare metal, CSI for all the leading CSI providers, compatible with Kubernetes version 1.17, are now all built in. And the third thing that we're announcing today is cluster monitoring with Prometheus and Grafana is now built into the dashboard. It's built into the product, where you're welcome to bring your own observability stack, but to the extent that you want to, it's built in with managed Prometheus and managed Grafana to monitor all of your Kubernetes clusters, and making it easier for you to build applications and identify when problems in applications are actually being caused by problems with Kubernetes clusters. So it's a whole bunch of, if you think about it, simplifying networking, simplifying storage, and integrating with more storage solutions, simplifying integrations with bare metal environments, and simplifying the observability, so you can actually focus on getting value from your Kubernetes environments faster. And minimizing some of the integration complexity that goes into all of this.
I would imagine then it's for both deployment as well as manageability operations is the benefits of this, correct?
Absolutely. It's not just the initial deployment, right? The initial deployment is the beginning, but it remains fully managed after that, which means that you don't have to deal with the care and feeding, monitoring, troubleshooting, and upgrades of this. So it's for ongoing upgrades, management as well.
That makes sense. And it seems like you're hitting some pretty good targets that are heavily used in the market with VMware and Calico and some of the technologies that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's been remarkable, actually. Since we launched the free tier, which is completely self-serve, we've seen some really high-quality enterprise customers actually coming through the free tier. And because there's a lot of talk of Kubernetes as a service, but I think because this is kind of what we've always done as a company, the SaaS-based delivery architecture, it allows people to kind of experience that difference by themselves, where they can log in, actually get access to that cloud control plane, bring their own infrastructure, whether it's their public cloud-based environments or on-prem environments, or their lab and the laptops, and actually deploy clusters right away and kind of experience this new paradigm for how I think you can run Kubernetes-based clouds with the speed and simplicity of the public cloud. And we're thrilled with the level of traction we're seeing.
Talk a little bit. I'm curious about you talked about sort of 6 years ago when Platform 9 came into being, and I remember those days of do we want to put this in the cloud, or do we trust it, all that security, et cetera. And of course, things have swung into the cloud. Not everything has. But I'm curious about the bare metal part of your announcement. Is that a representation or representing, as more of the manageability is moved into the cloud and more of the kind of as a service is being used by organizations? Now, how do we bring that back into our environment to be able to run it on our own hardware that we can put under the same structure, if you will, kind of our own platforms?
Yeah, I think the bare metal drive is driven by two things. Ironically, once an organization decides that their lens into the cloud is really Kubernetes, that Kubernetes is their cloud API, is their cloud operating system, paradoxically, it actually makes it more attractive to run bare metal clusters, run Kubernetes on bare metal clusters, because you get more performance. You get to simplify the stack. You don't need to deal with, the virtualization penalty, whether that's a financial penalty in the form of the VMware tax, but also the operational penalty. Deploying like a traditional vSphere NSX stack that's pretty complex. If you look at the fact that what I just shared today in terms of our announcement, Mitch, is our solution has managed Kubernetes with support for Docker-based workloads and Calico, all built into the cloud as a simple cloud-based control plane that you can be up and running in with 5 minutes, right? Compare that to the complexity of standing up like a full VMware stack with NSX and then running Kubernetes on top. So performance benefits, operational simplification, because you can collapse the stack and say, look, here's my cloud, and I'm going to run that on the smallest possible footprint that I can, like with an operational footprint that I can. And then there's the financial angle, right? You can get more performance ROI, more density, and more value out of your equation. The other thing that's happening with the bare metal is, if you look at a lot of the edge deployments, in some cases, customers have like an existing VMware deployment, but that's much more prevalent in the private cloud architecture. I would say VMware is much more commonly seen. But if you look at the retail industry, if you look at smart stores, running VMware in the stores is a huge operational undertaking, and it's not for the faint of heart. And if you have 10,000 stores, you would probably have to deal with 10,000 vSphere installations. And it doesn't make sense, because vSphere, which, as you know, our founders at Platform 9 were early engineers at VMware. When we designed vSphere was designed for the data center deployment architecture. And so if you think about the edge, there's also this desire to say, how can I bring up infrastructure that is in the store with no human intervention at the store? Because I may have fashion designers in some of these fashion stores. I might have like baristas in a cafe. I might have like servers or restaurant employees in a quick serve restaurant. I don't have technical staff in the store.
Right.
This has to just work, right? So there is a desire to actually boot up the machines. When the machines in the store power up, they go to the cloud directly, and then they're provisioned and managed entirely from the cloud, with no technical staff being available in the store. Bare metal becomes a critical capability for the edge. So I would say it's a number of these factors, including the suitability to minimize the operational complexity at the edge, but it's also the performance angle, it's also the financial angle, and it's about operationally simplifying the stack and saying, if my lens into the cloud is Kubernetes, I want the minimal stack that I can run Kubernetes on.
And make it as easy and consistent
as shallow
across all of that, right?
As shallow, right? Don't make a very tall stack, because then problems compound up the stack, right? Make it the tightest stack that you can build, because it's a fewer moving parts.
It's interesting in the telecom space. There's also a lot of discussion and research and things happening about the kind of edge computing that would happen in the home. So you imagine VR and other types of applications, or heavy concentrations of data coming out of a plugged-in autonomous car, things like that. Same kind of thing, I think, potentially could move even into the home environment as well as business, as a service provider into someone's location.
And I feel like in some ways, Mitch, we're starting to see the cloud come towards the consumer, right? I think the cloud is going from being, for the last 10 years, we talked about the cloud as being this aggregated entity, right? This centralized concept, like it's the Amazon data center.
It's out there somewhere.
It's out there, right? But now I think with 5G, I think it's actually making a huge jump from being out there to actually coming very close to your home. Because if you think about, certainly your cell tower, every one of us, I think in the metropolitan area, is probably going to be within a couple of years, no more than a few miles away from a cell tower. But then you think about even the packet core deployments, right? Some of the 5G backend deployments that happen, even those are happening at metropolitan scale. So So the cloud and Kubernetes environments, and therefore applications that can run and harness these latency advantaged locations are coming closer to the consumer.
Yeah.
And potentially that makes it easier to get to the home, though I'm not convinced that ROI in the last mile jump is going to be as high. But certainly I think the 5G is going to be a way by which the cloud really proliferates from being a centralized concept to being a distributed concept. And I think 5 years from now, Mitch, we won't talk about cloud as a centralized concept. We will talk about cloud as being ubiquitous. And I think it'll be ubiquitous managed by Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm. I think we agree on that topic from different perspectives, which is great. Well, it's been really good, really great talking with you. Is there anything else about the announcements we want to make sure we want to touch on, or did you get to all the things we need to talk about?
I'd love for your viewers to try it out and check out our free tier. It's at platform9.com. There's a live sandbox environment. And then if you go look at the live sandbox environment, you can actually get access to the free tier beyond that. So invite your followers and viewers to take it for a spin.
That's on platform9.com. I think it's right on the front page, if I remember where I saw it last. I think it's called the Freedom Plan or something like that.
It's freedom in cloud, right? I think that Kubernetes is going to bring about a level of, by making cloud everywhere, it's going to give people a lot of freedom in terms of how they want to consume cloud computing. And that's why we call it the Freedom Plan. It is free forever, but it's, I think, a great way for people to experience this vision for ubiquitous Kubernetes.
Well, wonderful. Congratulations on the announcement, and some interesting topics. I'm sure we'll find some ways to reconnect again and explore the topic some more. So
look forward to it.
Rish, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Suresh Raghuram, who is CEO and co-founder of Platform9. Thanks for joining us.
Join top experts and peers for a Splunk virtual event, DevOps Open Source Insights and Innovations. Open source powers the world, drives innovation in technology and in practice, and reduces the proliferation of products that just don't work together. In the arena of DevOps, open source tools and standards enable problems to get solved. Come take a look at some of the ways Splunk solves problems with open source and how we are contributing to open source solutions to make your work life better. Register today.
Okay, thanks, Mitchell. Great stuff today. Hey, guys, that's going to close it out for Tuesday, July 21st. I hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back Thursday with fresh new content. Stay tuned for that. But until then, stay safe, stay well, stay strong. TechStrong, everyone. Alan Schimmel, we're out.